Alright, so this time we're going to do respawning. Um, Whenever the character dies, they come back to a respawn point. The first thing you need to do is we need to actually generate like a respawn point flag, or a prefab kind of deal. I like to do this. I saw this in the Project Saturn video first, but it's a pretty good idea, I think. We're going to make an arrow. So I made a box and then a wedge. And all you have to do is take that, turn that to, let's see, scene, rotation, 5. And then bring this together. Alright. We have like a little wedge now. Little arrow. I like that. Alright. And then if we go over to it here, you can see right there's my little arrow. And then what we're going to do is right inside that arrow, we're going to put pivot. And for some reason it went way up there. Okay, so that's our basic form. Now what I like to do is these guys need a script to make them hidden. And I don't think I have that script written in this yet. No. Okay, so we're going to make a new script. And we're going to call it hide at start. Because I want to be able to see them in the creator, but I don't want to mess with them. This is also in the Project Saturn tutorial. And the only thing that needs to be in here is self.entity semicolon hide. Right like that. That's it. So that as soon as the script runs the start function at the very beginning when everything's made, it hides this object. That's it. So now we can come in here, we can do the box. We'll script that to our effects and hide at start. And then we can say the wedge, hide at start. There you go. So the box and the wedge will hide at start. So then the other thing I want to do is I want to make the wedge and the box children of the pivot, which then I'm going to name respawn point. Okay, so now I've got like a little arrow with a pivot and everything, and it's set up on an angle. And then what we're going to do is right click on here, save as prefab, and then what I normally do is go into player and put them in with the player. And then we're just going to respawn point. So now when we go into assets, prefabs, player, right there's a respawn point. We could drag another one out. It's not working. It is somehow. Good. That's a little weird. We don't need 3 respawn points. Okay. So, let's come over here to our player. There's a little bit of junk laying around because I used this, I just did the aim down sights tutorial. I just reopened that. And let's reset. Okay. And bring this up. Bring it over. and you want it about chest level-ish. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as it's not super high and it's not in the ground. But if you place it where it's like in the ground, that could cause issues with physics. Because this is going to be the actual point you're going to respawn at. And then I'm going to take our FPS player, and I'm just going to move him a little bit. Oops. Oh, come on. Alright, screw it. And we don't need you. Alright. So when we first start the game, we'll spawn in this corner of the map. And then whenever we die, we're going to make it to where we respawn at this point. Alright. Because we're going to die by falling all the way down there. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to go into player script. Well, let's do the other one first, actually. Alright, let's go into our scripts. I'm going to put this under player because it's going to be a manager. Okay, so I made a respawn manager script, and I also want the player script open. Alright, managers handle functions. Basically, they store functions. What this does is you could put all this respawn into the FPS player script, and that's okay if you want to do that. But I don't like it for two reasons. My first reason I don't like it is it makes this FPS player script so big that it's already how many? It's already like 733 lines. It doesn't need to be adding on 20 lines, 30 lines, 40 lines every manager. The other thing is, if, say, Leadwerks updates the player, the FPS player script, because they want to change something to make it better or to add functionality, which is good, you'll have to go back to your backup, copy out all your script, and put it into the new one if you want to use the new update. With the manager, you're only transferring like 3 or 4 lines of code back into your FPS player because the 50 lines of code are in the manager, and it's still good because it's not going to affect the manager, it's only going to affect the player. Does that make it? So that's why I like doing managers. So in this manager, what we're actually going to do is we're going to copy out kill. This is why. Looking through, we want to respawn when we die. The way that the character dies is it takes damage through this hurt function. The hurt function takes damage and it splatters the blood on the screen and does all that awesome stuff that's really great. And then at the very bottom it has this self-kill. What this self-kill right here does is actually run this function. So this is what actually makes, like, it makes a shape and it makes a pivot and it does all this stuff, but it's the part that makes the character, like, fall to the ground and become unplayable. So we want to reverse all of this stuff to make the character playable again. So all I'm going to do is just copy all this out, and I'm going to dump it into a new function in here. So normally when I start a new function, I leave start and I leave update world because I typically use those, but not update physics and collision and all this stuff, right? So I'm going to take that stuff out, and starting right there, I'm going to put function script, and then you can name these anything you want. I'm going to call it respawn. Right like that. Alright, so now I have created the respawn function in my respawn manager. And I'm just going to paste that entire death or kill function in here. Alright, so We're going to now analyze what each of these lines of code do and reverse that effect. Okay, self-corpse create. So this is creating a pivot. The next line creates a shape and then loads it from a pre-existing shape. And then it says that the pivot it just created is given that shape. And then it releases the shape. Basically it deletes this original shape because it doesn't need it anymore, because it's now the corpse shape. And then it hides your flashlight. Then it hides this whole if statement, hides your weapons. It sets the mass of the new object it created to 5. It sets its matrix to the matrix of the camera. Then it uses the takes the camera and makes it a child of this object. Sets its position. It changes its physics to prop and its collision to true. And then it sets its collision type to 0. Now, this is actually the entity, which is the character. The corpse is then reset with a friction level. It generates an omega 5 or generates an omega that randomly creates some physics velocities and then normalizes the velocities, sets their velocity. That's what sends it moving. And then sets the entity mass to 0 and takes it to rigid body physics, so it's not a character anymore. Alright, so all that said, all this corpse stuff at the top we don't need, because it has nothing to do with what we're going to do. All we're going to do is come to the bottom, and we're going to say self.corpse semicolon release. And what that'll do is that'll just completely delete that corpse, and then we don't have to worry about like, oh, the corpse got its physics set, really? And it got the cameraman, whatever. It's going to get deleted down here anyway. So we could take out all that corpse. We also, this velocity is completely already used. We don't need that. So what we're left with is something like this. So the flashlight's hidden. I personally don't care because that's just a keystroke for the player to fix. So I'm going to leave that hidden. Now, we have to reshow the weapons, reset the camera, reset the entity, reset its mass, reset its physics mode. Okay, so to reset the weapons, actually we can fix this self part first. If you run it with all these selves in it, they're not part of this script. So what we're going to do is right here in the respawn, inside the brackets we're going to make the argument player. And what that does is whatever's inside of the brackets of the respawn trigger will become the word player here. So we're going to take all these selves and make them say player dot script, right? And I mean, I could put that up there, but you also need entity, so it's easier. I think it's easier just to do it this way. Personal preference. Okay. And actually, that's gonna. We're gonna do something there, so I'm not gonna change that. And this is taking too long. I'm just going to do, well, I only need players now, it looks like. Alright, and then one more script. Okay. Oh, almost messed up. Alright, so all the selves now no longer say self except this one. If we make the player, excuse me, the camera it's setting its parent to the corpse. That way it doesn't have to do a whole bunch of like, when the camera moves, update this, all this stuff, right? Um, but if we reset this to the player entity, it's going to mess up when they respawn, and the camera's going to be all jerky and almost uncontrollable. You want the camera to be apparent nil. You don't want it to be apparent. Alright. Or you don't want it to have a parent. That way it freely moves around with the player. Also, if you're using like a third person, the camera won't be set properly. So now the next thing is the collision type. I'm just going to cheat and tell you it's collision type 3. But the way I found that out is I went into the player and I added a line right before set collision type and said system print collision type, and then just looked at the output log and it said it was 3. So that's how I found that out. I could have done the same thing with mass, but what I did with mass, the thing is, the mass, you don't know what the mass is unless you go into here and look at your actual mass in the physics, which is 10. But some scripts mess with that, and I actually have run through some of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to player entity set mass. We're going to make a variable about that. So we're going to come back to, actually I need that open still. Come back to the player, and right in here what we're going to do is, see right here is corpse set mass 5. Wait, where's entity? There it is. Entity set mass 5 right there. We're going to say self dot respawn mass get mass. Actually, that's horribly coded because I'm dumb, but respawn mass equals self dot entity get mass. And then we just need to make this all the way back to the top. And you can see that ADS mode. If you don't have that ADS from that tutorial, you can just put it right where that one is, right under it. It doesn't matter, as long as it's up here and says that. Alright, so we've set the respawn mass when they respawn. That way if the scripts roll around and they're like changing the mass here and there, like if you're making a space game where you want the mass to be 10 when he's inside a spaceship, but you want it to be 0 when he's outside the spaceship, or I don't know what you're doing. The thing is, it doesn't matter. Your mass will be reset. And if you're changing the physics property or any of these other things throughout your script, you're going to want to do the same thing with a variable. It's just, I don't know what you're doing with it, so. Alright. So that resets. We're going to just do, and then we're going to say player dot script dot respawn mass. And all that'll do is it'll go back to the player script, it'll get the respawn mass, and it'll make the player's entity that respawn mass. Physics mode, this I just looked up in the documentation. It's supposed to say character. I believe. Character physics. Well, let's look it up real quick. Just looking through the forums before I started the video. Command reference. This is an entity command. And we're messing with physics. And then set physics mode. So physics mode is character physics or rigid body physics. Alright. So we've set it to character physics. So that sets these three back proper. We still need to work on the camera, and we still need to do the guns. Okay. Right here, if all you have to do is put a dot entity, and then come over here and take off hide and put show. Now, that 90%, well, more like 30% fixes your guns. What you also need to do is Well, let's do it right underneath the guns. Okay. I don't know why it happens, but for some reason, the weapon tag loses its parent relationship to the camera. So we're just going to reset that relationship. So I don't know how that happens, but if you look in the player script up here, weapon tag set rotation. Oop, I just passed it. Sure, that's right. There. See, it's created as a child of the camera, so I don't know how it's losing that. But it is, apparently, because if you don't put this in, I could show you what happens later. So now our weapons should be working. The camera, we're going to mess with more, like setting the position of rotation, once we get the player aligned. Okay, so the player. The first thing we need to do is we need to give him health, or he instantly dies again. So we're going to say player.script. And I'm going to copy that out because it's getting old writing all that stuff. Player script dot health equals player script dot health or max health, excuse me. Max health. Alright, so the player script health equals the player script max health. That'll give him all his health back to max. Then we also want to say the spawn point's position. We haven't created the spawn point yet. So if we come up here and script dot spawn point equals, and just leave it blank, but then I do dash dash entity and then title it respawn point. Alright, what that does is that allows the player, or well the designer, excuse me, to grab an entity, drag it down and drop it into the window, and then it'll be set to that. And then we can just come down here. We also need variables for position rotation, I forgot about it. Script spawn pause equals nil for now. Script spawn rot equals nil for now. Okay, so we nilled out those. Now we're going to actually give them values down here. So self spawn pause equals spawn point get position. And in here, I didn't really look up what that does yet, but they have true in here whenever they're dealing with the player and camera position, so I just put true in there as well. I assume it does a better, or like a more accurate value, but I don't know. I'll be honest on that one. I didn't look into it. Alright, so we made it to where the spawn points, position, and rotation are captured into these values. So then what we're going to say is player dot entity, or is it player script entity? Well, I think it is player entity. Player entity set position, and then spawn position, and then player entity I might have to come back and make these all scripts. I'm making a lot of keyboard errors today. Okay, so we're going to set those, and then we're also going to come down here and player script camera. Spawn position, player script rotation, spawn rotation. And there I go again, that global local thing. I hope it's like riding a bike and I just start like remembering to do this all the time. Alright. So let's read our script one more time real quick. So we respawn with player script health equals player script max health. We're going to get the position and rotation of the spawn point. Then we are going to set the player's position to the spawn point, the player's rotation to the spawn point. We are going to script their weapons to show. And yep, looking good. Alright, I'm going to double check my cheat sheet here and see what I did. Yeah, see, I did use script entity, so I'm going to go ahead and add that. Right there, there. I don't think I'm doing that. Oops. Okay. I don't think I forgot to do anything either. It looks pretty much the same. Things are in a little bit of a different order, but that shouldn't matter. Alright. We gave him health. Oh, before we set his position and rotation, we should do the children. We should do these first, because that will matter. Let's just move him right underneath, giving him health. And where's that weapon one? Weapon tag right here. Alright. Let's go ahead. And now we need to integrate it into here with our FPS weapon. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to come down to the top of Update World. And we're going to make an if statement. If app.world or window app.window key hit key let's make it spacebar and self.health is less than or equal to 0. Then, so what will happen is if the space bar is pressed and they're at 0 or lower health, we're going to say local respawn manager. And that's just the way I do them. You don't have to do it exactly like that. You can make this local whatever you want. Just like any other variable. You can rename them as long as you rename them throughout. Like, if you wanted to say ADS mode was actually aim sight mode. Just as long as everywhere ADS mode variable gets changed, it's fine. And it's not the same as another variable. Don't want to cross variables. That's bad, because then they start actually like messing with each other, because it can't determine between the two. Alright, so the local respawn manager is the self.entity get child, And then we're going to actually tell it respawn manager. And that's going to be the name of the physical child. I'll show you. We haven't made that yet. And then what we're going to do is respawn manager respawn. Now, in here, that's the end of this. See, 4 lines of total code that we'll have to recode whenever they update the player, instead of all of this, right? In here, if we put self.entity, what that'll do is inside this bracket, it'll make self-entity player. So these will all actually say like self-entity script, and it references back properly to here. You could also do, instead of doing in the parentheses, you could leave them blank on both, and then come in here and say local player equals self-entity get parent player. Or you don't even have to say player because it's the direct parent. But just more ways of doing it. I like this one because then I can drop 2 lines of code. Alright, so now let's go back here. We don't have our respawn manager anywhere in here yet, so it won't work. So what we need to do is we need to make another pivot. And I like taking these pivots and moving them like right into the middle of his chest and storing them like right here. But you can like scatter them around him. Since they're pivots, they have no actually like function. Okay, this word here, respawn manager, needs to be the exact same as this get child. You could change them, but you have to change them both. They have to be the same. And then we're going to take this up and we're going to make it a child, right? So whenever the player script looks for the child respawn manager, it finds it. Whenever the respawn manager looks for the parent, it finds it. Alright, and then we're going to give him that new respawn manager script we made. And we're going to set, just by drag and drop, to that respawn point we made way back at the beginning. Alright, let's save this and run. Spat. Alright, so we're dead. We hit the space bar. Oh, we did something wrong. Alright, so get child string 2 is a number expected. Find child. Daggone it. Get child is a different function than find child. I apologize. The other thing I'll show you while I'm here is what I normally do to remember what all these managers and how to reintegrate them. I paste in here like the function it's in, and then the lines I added. And sometimes I'll like come out here with a comment and be like, very, wow, top. And that'll just tell me at the very top of this, or like approximately line whatever. And then all you have to do to make this not mess up your script is like comment the entire thing out. And then the next time, let's give that a little bit more space. The next time they update the player script, I could just come in here, oh yeah, my respawn manager, oh hey look, and just copy and paste those lines right out of my respawn manager. Yeah, it beefs up the code by about like 5 lines. I'd really think it's negligible for the ease of restoring this. You could make a cheat pad, like I've got these cheat pads here. That's for the next tutorial. I have these cheat notepads. Like you can see here, I actually use the O key for respawn, so it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do. Let's save that and save this, and let's go again. Alright, jumping to our death. Spat. Oh, whoa. That was a little weird. Did I miss it altogether? I don't think I missed it. Something weird's going on there. Let's make this a little bigger, just in case I did miss it. Alright. Okay. Alright, something's not working. Well, spacebar. Attempted to call method respawn. Respawn manager, respawn. Did I, like, spell it wrong over here? Doesn't look like it. Not you. Respawn. Local child equals self-entity find child. Child respawn. Alright, the only difference is here I called it child. I don't like that. I thought about it later and I was like, child is too generic. That would be too easy to have multiple scripts that have, or not scripts, but multiple different calls to child. So I made it the respawn manager in this tutorial. That's a little bit more clear what it is. It's registering the key hit and the health, and then it goes in. And for some reason it doesn't like to... Doesn't want to go. That's weird. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. Did I mess up the function script respawn? No? Function script respawn. Not exactly sure what happened there. I'll look into it and get back.